Hello Lima, brought to you by Good Food Restaurants, home of Happy Days, Beer Barrel, and Old City Pride. Also by Fresh and Faded, Jones Clark Funeral Home, and Lima Pallet Company.
The justice system in Lima Allen County has always been subject to scrutiny, whether it's overcrowding, sentencing disparity, and racial fairness, to the recent inadequate services of the Public Defender's Office. The Public Defender's Office is a critical pathway in the justice system, constitutional rights of a fair judicial system, regardless of economic means. Today we talk to two people very familiar with the justice system, Judge Jeffrey Reed and well-known local attorney Mr. Jerry Pitts. We're also going to talk interesting about a novel Judge Reed has put out also, so stay with us today.
People have filed with our office with reference to attorneys assigned to them that they've never met or talked to until 2 or 3 minutes before they're standing in front of a judge. So how can you represent someone you don't know?
Can't remove an attorney just because the client doesn't like what the attorney's saying or doesn't get along necessarily with the attorney. Certainly everybody would hope in a perfect world that the attorney-client relationship would be one where they trust each other.
Well, it's certainly been interesting topics going on over the last couple of weeks about the Defender's Office. We're going to talk about that today. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. It certainly is going to be what I think interesting. Before we get to the point of talking about the Defender's Office, I can't help but to say that at the second half of the show today, everybody stick around. The book that the judge wrote is just, and I'm not one who's going to, as I say, pass off unfair praise, but it is an interesting subject when we talk about that book in the last half of the show. Before we talk about that, let's talk a little bit about the Defender's Office. It's been a topic of conversation. It's been one that I think has been talked about for the past couple of years. When I was doing, and I like to say that I do my research, when I was doing my research, I'd like to start with you, Judge. It seemed that this is a subject, the Defender's Office, that has been talked about for some time. In other words, the commissioners to the Common Pleas Court has really been looking at this in terms of addressing what they call, and I don't want to use the word inadequacy, but the overstress of the Defender's Office.
I think overstressed is a good way to characterize it. Over the last several years, we've had a lot of retirements and unfortunately a lot of deaths of some really prominent criminal defense attorneys that did a lot of court appointments. Mm-hmm. So the numbers of our attorneys that are willing to do court appointments has gone down. So that puts a little extra stress on the attorneys that are still willing to do that.
But given the importance, Judge, since it's kind of critical that people have fair representation. Exactly. So do you say, and I know Jerry's going to jump in there soon, are you saying because of that lack of representation there could be people not getting fair trials? And I don't want to put words in your mouth, Judge. I just want you to speak.
No, I don't think that's a fair characterization. The court, the judges and the courts, it's our responsibility to make sure that individuals that come before the court that can't afford to hire their own attorney get adequate representation. The Supreme Court mandates that. Yeah. And the word is adequate representation. It's not like you get the best lawyer in town at no cost. So as judges, we're responsible to make sure that there's someone available that can represent, someone experienced. And the Ohio Public Defender's Office has set certain criteria, certain continuing education criteria and educational experience criteria for persons to even be eligible to be court-appointed counsel. But the lack or the lower numbers of attorneys that are available to do that puts more burden on the attorneys that are doing it, and to spread an attorney around among 5 clients is different than to spread that same attorney and have them represent 10 clients.
Yeah, that's a good point. Having said that, though, Jerry, you saw the opening clip, talked a little bit about the NAACP president talking about this issue and how it's pressing the justice system going forward. You coming from a different aisle over there in the municipal court, have you represented?
It's a start on his premise is a basic misunderstanding.
Talking about the NAACP president.
Right.
Okay.
His first premise is a misunderstanding.
Go ahead.
Basically, what people don't understand is at a preliminary hearing, those are not to determine somebody innocent or guilty. They only determine if there's probable cause to take the case to the bigger court, where Judge Reed may be. At that particular hearing, you may not get a call to represent somebody on a preliminary hearing until 3 or 4 o'clock. the day before.
I follow you.
Which doesn't give you a whole lot of time about that, but those probable cause hearings are more or less fact-finding, if you can get any. And the second part is basically a situation that deals mostly with bonding.
Okay.
So you don't really have to meet with someone earlier in that particular case, but let me finish here real quick.
Go ahead, Jerry.
You don't have to meet with someone in that particular case. 90% of them that you have been called to represent them in a preliminary hearing, even if the bond is $5 or $500, 90% of them don't even have that amount to get out.
Therein lies the indigent need for services.
Exactly.
So having said that, Jerry, you certainly are one, and I know the judge can step in here at any time to understand that the community feels, and I'm not speaking for the whole community, I guess I'm just paraphrasing here for dialogue, that people are going to jail for injustice. In other words, people aren't getting their fair share because they're not being fairly represented.
That's another misconception. There's always got to be what we call...
With most of those, Jerry, being poor, being black, being minorities.
Probable cause got to be there, but also you got to also understand the limitations when one finds themselves in the justice system without adequate funding.
Okay.
Now that's a situation in itself. Number one, what people don't understand, a public defender is different than a court-appointed attorney.
Okay.
Number one, the public defender's office handles jailable misdemeanors. I wouldn't get a call for one of those situations unless it's a conflict of interest, meaning there's two defendants who the public defender can't represent both of them, so they might call me to represent one of them. Then in the other instance, that is in the instance that you are court appointed, that comes normally through the felony system.
Jerry, hold on that, because I think, Judge, if you could step in here, I think you bring up a good point. One of the things we like to do with the show is educate the public. That's what this topic is about. So you're telling me that there's a difference between a court-appointed attorney and the public defender's office, Judge?
Yeah. Jerry's right. We don't have a county-wide public defender office. We're working on that. We're working on that. There is a public defender that handles cases down at municipal court. When they get bound over to the felony level, to the common pleas court, it's a court-appointed system where we have local lawyers who are willing to do court appointments. Not all lawyers do criminal work. Not all lawyers that do criminal work will take court appointments. So we have a limited number of attorneys that are willing to and able to take court appointments. So it is different. There's a municipal court public defender office that does the preliminary hearings and municipal court work, and then once it's bound over, we're working on a system where we have a list of people that are willing to take criminal appointments, and then we go based upon their qualifications, because not all lawyers, for example, are qualified to handle a death penalty case.
Right. So when we get to that, Jerry, and we have that topic and dialogue about where we go from here with respect to the education part of it. In other words, people are confused about the system in and of itself.
Exactly.
I mean, it's a complicated system, i.e. the justice system. Having said that, how do you make the community, Jerry, as a whole, particularly, and I don't want to make this a race issue, but particularly the poor, the minority, those who are on the fringes, feel that they're getting adequate services if it's a stress situation?
A major problem is,
you sit in front of them.
As I said before, a major part of it has to deal with economics.
Yeah.
We're not talking about color, we're talking about economics.
I agree.
And bond situations, to be able to get a bond, you're going to have the proper equity of the cash. And number one, they don't have either of them. That's normally why you are court appointed. Number two.
But Jerry, they're saying mass incarceration and the lack of most of them in jail systems today is because of lack of representation. In other words, there's a lot of people in jail.
It's not the representation. That has nothing to do with it.
And I want to be the devil's advocate, but I'm saying it is. So tell me why it isn't.
Number one, what happens is often there's a breakdown in communications with those who do not have proper funding, as well as dealing with the lawyer.
All right.
Number one, they didn't pick you. And that's the hard part.
Who didn't pick who, Jerry?
The defendant didn't pick you to be their attorney.
I follow you.
So then they're already upset with you about that.
I got you.
Then often you cannot even get to the facts of the case without them coming at you from the perspective of, you're not who I want.
I follow you.
Number two, when you're trying to communicate with them about their case, they're already upset about some other stuff that they felt happened prior to you even getting there.
So why can't I ask this, Jay, because you bring up a good point. With that kind of frustration that you just talked about, Mr. Pitts, why can't I say to the judge, I'm mad? When I get to the judge of common pleas, when I get in front of the Judge Reed, he understands all the things that you talked about there are now frustrating to this defendant. Judge, what do you do then? Knowing that he didn't want Jerry as his attorney, knowing that he has no money. He's frustrated when he gets to you.
Unfortunately, that happens a lot. And they want to fire their court-appointed attorney. You don't necessarily get a right to fire your court-appointed attorney. You can, if you hire an attorney, you can fire whoever you want and go out and hire whoever you want. The Constitution and the Supreme Court mandates that we have to appoint competent counsel. And so we have this pool of competent counsel. Now, I'll take the middle ground here between the two of you. I agree with a lot of the complaints. I unfortunately see it's not a majority. It's a small minority. Even the court-appointed counsel, whether they're overworked or underpaid, which they are, they're not just doing their job as to seeing their clients and preparing their clients for what they're about to experience in the courtroom.
That's a good point. Let's go here. Let's go here, gentlemen. When we get back, we're going to find out whether or not there's some solutions. We understand there's some frustration. When we come back, stay with us, guys, for solutions.
Early in the morning when the Happy Days stores open, turn the grills on, get the coffee turned on. Across town, the beer barrels, there's a lot of prep work that has to be done. Sauces being prepped on the stove. At Old City Prime, everything's from scratch. I think the culture in our company is that we care about our people, and in return, our people care about our customers. Thank you so much to all of our team that's worked for us, and thank you so much to all the communities that we're in for being such great customers.
Our barbers and cosmetologists are licensed professionals who specialize in all phases of hair. Whether you are getting a line-up, cut, beard trim, or design, our barbers will help create your unique style. With full-time cosmetologists, also taking appointments and walk-ins from lashes, presses, color, wax to braids, and weaves, Fresh and Faded cosmetologists do it all. Call us for an appointment today. Fresh and Faded Unisex Hair Studio, the largest shop in Northwest Ohio. 419-221-FADE.
If you ain't fresh, you ain't faded.
Hello, welcome back. We've had an interesting conversation to start off with. Jerry, when we talk about the frustration of the defendants, why are the defendants so frustrated? I've seen them, we've heard some feedback from them on our show in terms of our Facebook page. The frustration seems to be bubbling over that these guys are not these guys, and I don't want to be disrespectful, that the defendants aren't getting adequate service, the attorney's not coming to visit them, they're not seeing them, they don't know their attorney until the time they show up in court. You're saying all that is malarkey?
Not malarkey. That's a different term. I'm saying it's misconceptions.
Okay.
Because number one, for an attorney to even go see his client, which is unusual, which is questionable, there's 4 times a day they won't even allow the attorney in, and that's not the judges. This is from the sheriff's office directives.
That the attorney can't see his client.
Can't see his client.
That's interesting.
Number 2 is that lots of times when my clients are out on bond, I hear from them less than very rarely because they are out. But the ones who are sitting there in the county jail amongst each other, having conversations, if you saw one client and you got 19 or 20 clients in there, they all want to know, why didn't you come see me today?
Yeah.
So therefore, what you have to do in an attorney is you have to do it selectively. If somebody's case is coming up soon, I may have to see you now, but I don't need to see somebody whose case is 90 days down the road.
That's a good point, though. Having said that, though, Judge, don't you see, how do you pass judgment, though, in that circumstances? How do you, as a judge, see these defendants come before you, knowing that there's a level of frustration? I know we touched on this before, and how does it affect you? I mean, how do you?
It's a struggle because. Part of my job is basically as a representative of the justice system. I am trying to represent it as a fair system. It's not a perfect system. Okay. I think there's a misconception among a lot of people that just because you pay a lawyer a lot of money, they're going to do a better job than someone who's appointed. We have a lot of dedicated attorneys that are willing to do court-appointed work. And they're giving just as good and sometimes better service than the privately retained attorneys are. The privately retained attorneys are there for, it could be argued, they're there for one reason, for the money. The people that are doing the court appointments are there. They know they're not getting a lot of money, and we've tried, and we're working on getting the rates up higher to pay court-appointed counsel, but they are there not always for the money because they're not getting it. They're there to serve justice.
How many total, Judge, real quick, in the course of a year, how many people require public defenders in Allen County?
Percentage-wise, it's probably 80% of the criminal defendants.
What? 80% of the people that come before you?
That's a conservative estimate.
That's startling.
And we have to inquire every time someone comes before us at the initial appearance. I inquire if they have the funds to hire a lawyer. And I would say it's easily 80% that don't. Even they may be working, but they may not be making the type of wage. They may have the expenses, child supports, utilities, things like that they can't afford to pay a lawyer.
Judge, you've been around a long time, since 99, 2000, some of that area. Where are you going from here, though? Is the system broken to the point where it can't be fixed? But it sounds like you and the commissioners are working on
it's fixable. We're working with the commissioners, the state public defender's office, even down in Columbus, the state budget. A lot of it is tied to that because our county gets reimbursed a certain percentage for the funds that we pay court-appointed counsel. And in the current state budget, there hopefully is going to be more money available. So then the reimbursement rate will go up so we can increase the pay that we give court-appointed counsel. And there's also some exploration in expanding the public defender office that does the municipal court work, making that county-wide, where we might have full-time career public defenders that have the funds, the resources, the clerical help. See, that's the other thing people don't understand. A court-appointed attorney who's not getting paid a lot, they have their overhead, their secretarial, all of that stuff to take care of. Private investigators, now we can provide funds for private investigators if the need is there. So it's a system where you've got overworked, underpaid attorneys, we've got a large caseload, and as Jerry said, a lot of times you don't get that cooperation from the client themselves.
But I hope what we're able to do, though, Jerry, before we get back to you, is that and get to this great book that we're going to get to. I'm going to get the judge's position on something, Jerry, because you're right. Having more public defenders is not going to solve the issue. Follow me. What we want to solve is why they're coming to the court system to begin with. Let me ask this question. I saw something in the paper a couple of weeks ago, and I'm going to get through this briefly. A 19-year-old received a 6-year prison sentence. Judge Jeffrey Reed on Monday asked the defendant why you got involved in crime, just with the wrong people at the wrong place at the wrong time. The judge says, did it seem like a good idea at the time? The defendant says yes, but it didn't end up well. Is that the response you expected?
Yeah, that's the response I hear all too often.
But no, back this up. He says yes. Did it seem like a good idea at the time? Yes. So, and I know we're kind of flipping gears here, and I want to pick your brain before I get to the book, Judge. How do you?
If we can,
it should have never been a good idea. Right. Follow me, Jerry. It should have never been a good idea.
Answering that question will get you the Nobel Prize.
All right.
Why are young people?
But that wasn't the answer you expected.
No. Why are 17, 18, 19-year-old individuals making these bad decisions?
Yes, Judge. Yes.
Why instead of settling your differences with an argument on the playground or a fist fight, why are we turning to guns?
And one of the things we want to do here, let you jump in here, Jerry, is that we want to be able to tell the community about where we're going as a community. This is called Hello Lima. Having said that, Judge, 19-year-olds should not be going to prison. Us arguing about whether or not a public defender's office has enough attorneys should not be the question. Follow me? It should be, yes, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Follow me, Jerry? That's the question.
I'm there with you.
We as a community have to address that basic
But as a defense lawyer, my thoughts have to go to immediately under those circumstances, what's the best defense I can provide for you with this line of thinking? And I'm saying if these young people would come in and treat us as if we were privately retained and give us the same consideration, lots of time we will be able to get more information.
He sees nothing wrong with him doing a crime. The crime never.
And that's 90% of the problem, because they don't see anything wrong with it. So therefore, they're looking at me and saying, "Why am I being incarcerated for something that doesn't appear to be a crime?"
Your answer to your concern is a line of cliches.
Yeah.
Don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Parents know what your kids are up to.
Yeah.
It's just it's having self-respect.
But having said that, Judge,
and teaching self-respect.
In the old days when we were, young adults, that would have been on the front page, a 19-year-old going to prison. Follow me, Jerry?
Yes.
That would have been something like when the guy said this real quick, he said, well, why did you do that? When the judge asked that, I never thought I would have done that. I should have done something. They're not thinking that way. Follow me, Judge? So it's easy, Jerry, to sit here and blame the attorneys. It's easy to blame the judges. At the end of the day, we have to, as a community, we have to address this line of thinking, Judge.
That is more or less the issue.
And I'm asking you, Judge, as the person who makes this decision whether or not that kid spends 6 years in prison and he's never going to come out the same, how do you address that? How do you wrap your hands around that when you get this kind of response?
I mean, that is the difficult part about being a judge, because every individual comes before me has a story. How did they get there? Why is a 18, 19-year-old there?
He's a baby.
I know. He shouldn't be there.
Yes.
He should be involved in sports,
yes,
or involved in school,
yes,
or music.
Thank you.
Or some other, I don't know. Again, it goes back to the stories we've been hearing for the last 40 years. It's a breakdown in the family. It's I feel like in some respects there's a lack of self-respect, or a lack of respect for lives. And it's like, if I'm disrespected, I'm going to shoot you. Well, in the old days, if I was felt, and we didn't even use the word disrespected, okay, you might go out on the playground and get in a fist fight, but then you go and you have your arms around each other and you walk away and it's over. Now it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I don't know how we got there.
Jerry, it's not sustainable.
Everything can be fixed. But the question here is, I get more trouble sometimes from the parents of these young folks justifying or attempting to justify to me while their particular youth is involved in this situation. And what glares out to me
is that, Jerry?
What's so glaring is I'm finding that the parents have been a sense of a little remiss. I'm gonna use that word, is remiss in their working with this child. And instead of working with this child, they've been justifying what they've been doing for years.
Well, saying that though, Jerry, there has to be some sense of understanding that this is not a sustainable system in terms of overcrowding in the prison system, addressing whether or not we have more. You could put 20 public defenders in the place of 1 or 2 if we don't address this. Follow me?
We got to re-educate and start not with just the young. We got to work with the adults, and maybe even a better explanation how the system works.
It's two separate questions. The problem with the criminal defense bar and the justice system is after the individual has committed the offense. The other part of the solution is, what are we doing with these young people before they get to the point where they're going to commit that offense?
Right. And I think, and I'm saying right because I can't get my hands around this, because you're right. Afterwards, it's too late. When they get to the front of the judge, follow me, there's certain mandates that you had to put him in prison for 6 years, Judge?
No, I could have put him in for a lot more.
No, I follow you.
That was a negotiated resolution.
All right, and I don't want to beat this one case up. I'm just talking about the broader system of when they get in front of you, how much latitude do you have? And I read your book and I understand, I'm trying to think of, man, this judge has to have empathy. In other words, when you talk about a writer, you always try to get your characters. When you see them in front of you, they could be any one of the characters or any one of the people.
A lot of what I do as a judge is I have to deal with after the fact, after the crime has already been committed. The questions you're asking is, what can we do as a justice system to address the problem with the young people before the crimes are committed? And that is the question that it's a societal issue.
Well,
it's a church issue. It's a parenting issue.
You can see we want to get to this. We're going to come right back and talk about a book that you guys are not going to want to miss. Stick around.
We at Lima Pallet Company thank you, Lima. In 1977, we started a small family business, and today we continue to grow. Lima Pallet is a full-service pallet and crate provider. Every customer is unique, which is why we build pallets and crates to our customers' specific requirements. Because we have our own fleet of trucks, we're able to provide customers with on-time, same-day, and 24-hour emergency deliveries. Coming together is the beginning, keeping it together is progress, and working together is success. Let's continue to succeed.
The loss of a loved one can leave you with a lot of unanswered questions, feelings of stress and anxiety, and grief that makes events difficult to handle. The experienced funeral directors at Jones Clark Funeral Home will guide you through the aspects of the funeral service with compassion, dignity, and respect. Our staff of dedicated professionals is available to assist you in making funeral service arrangements. The funeral directors at Jones Clark Funeral Home provide individualized funeral services designed to meet the needs of each family. Call us today to pre-plan your funeral.
Well, welcome back. We're going to switch gears here and talk a little bit, if we can, about an interesting book called The Suicide Support Group. And as a judge, I just was fascinated, not as a judge, as trying to put myself in the writer's frame of thought. I kept thinking about, man, Judge, what's going on here? What's going on here? And I'll say this, guys, and please understand, I said it at the opening. If you haven't, and please go online, we're going to get a signed copy by the judge available for online. We're going to give it to some readers who chime in. If you haven't had a chance to read this book, you are missing something. And I wouldn't say this lightly, Judge, I'm just fascinated. This book was good. This book, and I will say this, Judge, it's not going to appear on the Hallmark Channel. It's not going to be on the Hallmark Channel, so I don't want anybody to jump out. I don't think it's for anybody under 18. But Judge, and I'm not going to give anything away either. That's one thing I don't want to do. It's like a movie. I don't want to give anything away about this book because I think it's that good. And I've told somebody before, I've told a couple of people, this is going to be picked up in a TV series. I can guarantee you. Where did it come from, Judge?
Well, you're being very kind.
Where did it come from? Nope, read it. It's weird, Judge.
You're being kind, and I'll caution you, if you try to get in the frame of mind that I wrote that book in, you're going to hurt yourself.
Yes.
Be very careful.
It was a tough read.
It is graphic, it is dark, it has been described by close friends of mine as disturbing, and most of the time I'll get a look from people that can't imagine knowing me that I wrote it. It's pure fiction.
Right.
I don't know where it came from, other than there must be some dark recesses in everybody's mind, and people have asked, is it inspired by real life events? And the quick answer is no, but saying that, it may be inspired by some of the unfortunate things that I have seen in my career, in my life. Nothing specific, no one case that this is. I think everybody has experiences in their lives, and your mind takes in a lot of information, and that's hidden away in the recesses of your mind. And I have a hobby of creative writing, but Judge, I let it out.
As a reader, you like to be taken places where you normally don't go. That's why you read a book.
I hope that is a place that no one has ever been.
That's where this book took us, though, in terms of the history of the characters, and you will educate yourself on I had to go look up a diagnosis when it came to a certain chapter. I was fooled throughout this book until I got to the last part of the book, and then I kicked myself. I should have seen it coming.
So you didn't see it coming?
I did not see it coming.
Well, thank you. That's a compliment, because some people do. It's a psychological, I think, fair to say, a psychological kind of a thriller, a different approach. I did try to hide the true story until towards the end. So
which is what you did. Yes.
If you read it, a lot of people, after they've read it, will go back and say, oh, there's a little clue. There was a clue there, or here, there.
And I want everybody to pick this up. Didn't have a lot of time to get into it, but pick up this book and read it. And I appreciate everything today, Judge, as far as getting a chance to talk to you about this book.
All right, thank you.
Hello Lima, brought to you by Good Food Restaurants, home of Happy Days, Beer Barrel, and Old City Pride. Also by Fresh and Faded, Jones Clark Funeral Home, and Lima Pallet Company.